Hello and welcome to Full Focus, where law and news intersect. I'm Crystal Parham. In today's edition, we're going to be discussing bail, more specifically, bail reform. Do we need it? Do we not need it? With me, I have Jeremy Rowland. He is the owner of Triple R Bail Bonds out of Arkansas. He has a lot of perspective on this issue. He's been in the business for a really long time, and I'm so happy to have him on the show. Hello, Jeremy. Welcome to the show.
Hello, Crystal. Thank you so much for having me.
So, just for people that don't know what bail is, what is bail?
Bail essentially it's an assurance and a guarantee for the court that the accused will appear for not only arraignment, but for the entire process of if it goes to a trial or whatever the end disposition is. We have a judicial interest in the individual to make sure that the case has disposition and that the alleged victim or proven a victim has just an end to it, right, to make sure that the whole process happens.
And typically when someone comes in for a bail bond with you, what do they need and what do they pay?
Well, in the state of Arkansas, it's 10% plus $80. So we'll just use hypothetical. If the bond's $1,000, then 10% is $100. Plus this state collects $60 in fees on every bond, and the jail that the bond is produced at collects a $20 booking fee, so it'll be $180 on a $1,000 bond.
And go ahead. I'm sorry. No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
And we just look at, because I think that's one of the things that a bondsman can do is that we have the ability to finance. So we look at their finances, if they're on some sort of SSI or disability, or what their payment schedule is, or what their pay is each week, and we kind of look at it, and as long as they're, someone that'll co-sign or has some sort of, collateral or something, then it gives us the ability to finance that where it doesn't become such a burden.
And so let's say, for instance, the bail for someone is $20,000. How much of that would have to be in collateral before you would take the bail, the bond?
Well, that's a really hard question to answer, because we look at each bond in a different aspect of each time. The person, their family, their employment or non-employment. There's so many factors that go into that. I mean, I personally have posted a $20,000 bond with just grandma and mom co-signing for their young son or grandson, and $200, $300, $400, $500 down. Again,
really?
It depends on the situation. Yes.
Really? So you have a more holistic approach to your bail bond?
Well, because that's one of the things that bondsmen that we do is that we're members of the community. I mean, we are in the courtrooms day in and day out, and we know the people in this area, and we just have to look at each bond in a different light each time.
Now, how big is the area that you service in terms of population?
Well, we have agents all over the state of Arkansas.
Oh, I
I'm
see.
not just the only one.
Okay.
I'm in Sharp County, which has a total population of about, I'd say, 14,000, give or take 1,000. It's in the northeast Arkansas corner, so we border right on Missouri.
Okay. And so that's pretty fascinating that you would take such a small amount of collateral, depending on the circumstances and the parents and the family. And so how much of that, once the case is over, how much of that do you actually keep? Like, where's the business aspect of the bail bonds business?
The business aspect is in Arkansas that you cannot discount bonds. So if that $20,000 bond, Chris, what you mentioned, there would have that $2,080 has to be paid. And if it gets to the point to where the collateral has been exhausted and there's still a finance money owed, then that goes on to another collection type issue. In all my years since 2003, I have only had to foreclose on one house my entire career.
So let's talk about that. So the person puts the house up as collateral. They don't pay, or let's just say the defendant doesn't show up to court. What would happen?
Well, in Arkansas, if the defendant doesn't show up on a misdemeanor, we have 120 days, and for misdemeanors, district court, and for felonies in circuit court, we get 75 days. Okay. So once we receive the show cause order from the judge that we have this amount of time to locate the individual, if we locate that individual during that time and place them back in jail, then we're relieved. And if there's no money owed as far as the premium, then the collateral is returned back to the family. If we're unable to find that individual and the judge orders a forfeiture, then we have to pay that $20,000 bond that you and I spoke about earlier. So the first thing that I have to do is I have to pay that bond because I only get so much time to pay it. So I pay the $20,000, and then our first step is working with whoever posted the collateral to see if we could get them on some sort of restitution type system so they can maintain and keep their collateral. And if they're unable to do that, or just basically thumb their nose at the entire situation, which does happen, then we go through the legal process of foreclosure or collection.
So do you think that bail is a necessary measure in the criminal justice system, and are you for or against some sort of bail reform?
I absolutely believe that professional bail is a crucial part of the judicial system. I do think of the improvements that could be done, and the common ground that if you follow my Twitter feed is a more reasonable bond amount, okay? And having the ability to where people would really understand what professional bail does. So instead of it being a $20,000 bond, if their criminal history is not that extensive or whatever, then why don't we make that a $2,500 or a $5,000 bond? Let that be the common middle ground to where it guarantees the accused individual is going to go to court. It guarantees the alleged victim is going to have justice, and we don't have to worry about massive case backlog when they FTA, and then when these people that do miss court. And that's another thing, is that if you would just completely forget about everything that you've ever seen on TV about professional bail, I think we can get over the hump of what actual professional bail bond industry does.
Do you think like the television's giving bail bondsmen a bad rap?
You know, I've caught some flack for saying this, Crystal, but I have to completely agree. But in the same retrospect, I can't really shame the individuals that have done that because they have been able to promote themselves. And it's reality TV. I mean, it's scripted or however you want to put it, but when you get down to the nuts and the bolts and the core of professional bail, what individuals see on TV is less than 20% of the business.
Right.
Bondsmen, we build that relationship with clients and their family. We remind them about their court dates. They call and they check in with us. We establish that communication with them. If they're sick or if they get the flu or God forbid grandma has a car accident and they're in the hospital with grandma, we help get those records to get to the court if that's their court date. We are the middleman between the court, the attorneys, and the entire system, and it's a very important part. And again, I speak solely from my years of experience and all the courts, the 75 different counties in Arkansas that we have dealt with.
Do you feel, well, I know that you're against bail reform. Can you tell me why that is?
I'm completely against bail reform, mainly on the way that it's proposed. And
Okay.
I don't want to use the word angry, but I get very upset about some of the propaganda is the only word I can come up with that I see online in reference to bail punishes the poor, and you know, we do all these horrible things when we don't arrest people.
Right.
We don't set bail or bond amounts. We don't do any of those things. We just guarantee that these individuals are going to go to court. And another, you know, some points that I would hit on why it's so dangerous in the way that it's proposed, because, you know, that I see articles about petty theft. So if an individual goes into, let's just use you for instance, okay, Crystal?
Right.
If you go home today and someone has broke into your home and stole some of your most valuable possessions, and the police end up catching that individual. Now, granted, you as an attorney, you're innocent until proven guilty, but the tangible evidence says that that individual is the one who broke into your home, violated your trust. And the way that bail reform is proposed is that that individual is just going to walk out of jail. There's going to be no deterrent. There's going to be no guarantee. There's going to be nothing there to assure that that individual is going to show up for court so Crystal can have some type of justice. And then if they run, and a lot of states, have changed their laws, they're becoming sanctuaries for people who run on bail or just run on justice at all. And then you're going to be standing there forever going, where's the criminal justice system for me? And the other thing that that's going to do, Crystal, when there's no deterrent and it's just a revolving door, you're seeing it in New Mexico now, you're seeing it in New Jersey. People are getting arrested 4, 5, 6 times a week because they've been through this revolving door system. The anarchy of that is that, and you see it on YouTube every day, people who, as soon as they get pulled over from police, they whip out their phone and they immediately go into, lawyer mode, and the overall diminishment of respect for law enforcement, respect for the judicial system, is going to deteriorate over time. And I've narrowed it down in my tweets and stuff.
Right.
But I feel like 6 to 18 months, and you won't be able to close that Pandora's box once it starts.
So you basically think that bail is a way of keeping people in check with the government and with law enforcement? Is that kind of, and
I wouldn't use the word in check. I would use it as a form of responsibility.
Okay.
And
I'm just going to push back just a tiny bit on what you're saying. The purpose, I don't know about the state of Arkansas, but in New York, the purpose of bail is to ensure that the defendant comes back to court. Okay. And so as long as the defendant has enough community ties, right? Like, they have a job, they have a phone number, they have an email, they got a grandma or whatever, they should be released. Right? So what happens, though, sometimes is judges get nervous because, let's just say Mark is charged with assault in the 2nd degree. He beat up a cop. So just based on the charges, forgetting about his community ties, just based on the charges, the judge does not feel comfortable and they set bail on this person. First arrest. In that instance, as an attorney, that is not fair. That is not right. That is not the purpose of bail. And let's just say that person cannot make his bail. Let's say that bail is $10,000, which in New York, that would be a low bail for a felony. $10,000, that's a lot of money. And so, I think bail reform is there to address those issues, to address those type of people. Bail reform is not for, this repeat offender that's, been arrested, 10 times in the past month. Bail reform is not really for that person. Bail reform is really for people who, obviously, on petty things, you've been arrested 10 times, like for possessing crack cocaine residue, and your bail is like $500 or $600 every time you go in. What happens in New York is people end up pleading guilty. People end up pleading guilty because they're unable to make the bail and they want to get out of jail. Do you think that that's fair?
Well, Crystal, how I would reply to that is that every individual has their own power of choice. No one puts themselves in a position of bail or jail or putting, detriment times on their sons or their wives or their husbands. That's some of the things that I see is that everybody knows deep down in the core of their soul right from wrong. And I respect completely what you just said and totally understand where you're going with it too. However, that is appeasing to a small percentage of what is the overall problem.
Right.
Is that when we start allowing people to do petty crimes, or if we give them the ability to say, I can't afford bail, that's where, remember when I said anarchy? That's where that begins to form, because we cannot as a society just say, if you commit a crime, there's no deterrent and no responsibility for you to have to come back to court. That petty crime for John Doe, who's been working his whole life at that grocery store and gets bum rushed, and someone, steals something and runs out of the way, if we just say, hey, you're out, no jail, no nothing, just keep going, where's the deterrent in that? That's what is fearful to me as overall as time goes on.
But you're assuming the person's guilty, right? You're assuming, based on what you're telling me, you're assuming that every person that's arrested by police officers is guilty, and that's just not the case. I can tell you that I've tried a lot of cases, and I've never lost a trial. So, what I'm trying to say is, like, yeah, there's definitely people that, they've done things, they have a long history. I mean, I had a client that had 100 convictions. Can you believe it? He was in his 40s. It's unbelievable. But the premise is not, okay, the cops arrested you, the cops are right, you're guilty. The premise is that you're innocent until proven guilty. And I understand that, the poor person that got their stuff stolen, like poor Crystal that got my stuff stolen, I want retribution. But do I really want, they stole $100 of my stuff. Do I really want someone to sit in jail? Like in New York, I don't know what the jail times are like in Arkansas to wait for a trial, but in New York, I had a client wait in jail for 17 months because he could not make the bail. 17 months, and we got a not guilty. That's not fair. That's not right.
What you and I are doing great things right here, because 17 months on a bail. Do you know how much the bail was?
The bail was not even that much. The bail was, let me, if I can remember, because it was kind of an old case. It was 25,000, 30,000. Which?
Then what we just discussed there, Crystal, and what you just said, the professional bail industry would agree with you, or at least I would, as a bondsman since 2003, that a more reasonable bail, which would, if bail is more reasonable, okay, instead of 25,000, why not 2,500? Okay, then that assures the Crystal, the alleged victim, that this individual is going to go to court and the whole thing.
Right.
It depletes jail population as well.
Right.
Okay, and it does the overall everything, because the whole 17 months in jail would have not have been there if bail was more reasonable.
I agree with you.
You and I
agree with you.
We're connecting, but we're not connecting on that.
No, I agree with you. I agree with you. I think, I don't know what it's like in Arkansas, but I can tell you that in Manhattan, this case happened in Manhattan, and it was involving a police officer, okay? And my client was found not guilty, by the way. The police officer was totally lying, but he spent 17 months of his life in jail, and the reason why the bail was so high is because it involved a police officer. And so,
understandable.
And
that type of story there is what everyone latches onto to use as an example. There are bad apples and there are bad things that happen in every industry and every entity in the world every day.
Yeah.
However, if you look at it in retrospect, how can we, if we just completely took away the deterrent and the responsibility and guaranteeing the process, that to me, Crystal, is dangerous, and that's why I'm against bail reform. And everybody that talks to me about it that is on supportive of bail reform, they say, well, you're only in it because you just make money off of poor people.
But I mean, isn't that true? I mean, you have a conflict in a way, or not?
Well, certainly. Why can't you just put it in like car insurance? I'm having to pay car insurance every single day, even though I haven't had a wreck that day.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, I understand. I have to say that I am very impressed with your delivery, and I'm very impressed with your answers. And you know, a lot of things you're saying, I understand, you know, which is actually shocking to me. You know, so it,
Because you and honestly, Crystal, I think that the common ground, at least that I support, you know, in all the years that I've been in the bail business, I have people call me every day, okay? There's not a day off. There's not a vacation. There's not anything. Every single day that I get up, I'm on the hook from anywhere from 11.5 to $14 million worth of walking heartbeats that this company guarantees the judicial system of Arkansas are going to appear in court. And we know all of our clients. And that's one of the things that I want to get across is that bail bondsmen are not the savage people that just prey on the poor and do all this stuff. I understand when people talk about poor people being in jail, but they also understand when I say to them that every local, state, and federal, there are programs that can help instead of turning to crime. And I think people have to agree with me that instead of going out and, just real quick, one thing that has happened in Arkansas that is just unbelievable. In Central Arkansas, remember you told me about Little Rock?
right.
Remember Sherwood? You know where Sherwood's at?
No, not really.
Well, it's not too far from Little Rock. But anyway, there was a case that went to the Supreme Court where an individual went out and wrote a bunch of insufficient checks, hot checks, to vendors,
Right.
gas stations, grocery stores, etc. The checks were turned over to the prosecutor's office. The individual was arrested for the insufficient checks. She makes bail. She goes to court. She pleads guilty to them. Okay? Insufficient checks. Was supposed to pay the fines and costs and restitution. Ran off, didn't pay the fines, costs, and restitution. Well, the Arkansas ACLU got a hold of this case and took it to the Supreme Court that it was detrimental. And I might be off on a couple points of this case because I haven't really refined myself on it. But now they're saying that in Central Arkansas, you can basically write all the hot checks that you want, and you can't be arrested for them, and they're not even going to be able to suspend your driver's license. Now, let me ask you, Crystal, is that dangerous for a society to know
Well,
that I can go and write all the hot checks that I want, and I don't have to worry about any type of deterrent or jail or anything?
well, I think, listen, we have a lot of cases in New York where people write, you know, bad checks or they steal other people's checks. And a lot of times people plead guilty to crimes where they can't pay. They're on the payment plan, they're trying to pay, but, you know, really they don't have like $50,000 to pay back of the money that they spent. So in New York, we have something that's called a confession of judgment, where you can enter a judgment in court, and if you ever get any money, that money is automatically taken from you and returned to the person who you stole the money from. I mean that's a fact of. I mean, listen, if the person's stealing checks, right? They obviously don't have the money. So what's the option? The option is they take a plea and they try to figure out some kind of payment plan, or what? They go to jail for some checks.
That individual knew when they posted that check that it was insufficient.
Right.
When there are multiple ways to receive indigent help. That's all that I'm saying. And
right.
People may not agree with me and think, oh, this is just some savage bondsman sitting at a desk in Arkansas.
No.
I truly have empathy for the situation, but I also understand that, especially in today's society, there are multiple ways to receive help to where you don't have to put yourself in that vicious circle of going to jail.
Well, that's going to be cut off soon if the Trump administration has its way. So those are those things that can help people. That's a whole other topic.
Let's not go on politics, Chris, because we're going to go to a whole other planet on that.
But do you feel like there's, you know, a disparity between, like, for instance, white people that come into your bail bond office to get a bail bond, and like people of color? Do you feel like people of color are less accepted for bail bonds, or are they treated pretty much
Absolutely
equally?
not. That is, and I would refute that with the utmost ability that I have. It doesn't, crime or bail or any other type of thing that you want to have, call it. When it comes to this industry, crime has no race, no bank color or bank account balance. It doesn't matter. None of that matters. You know, this whole injection of, you know, that African American people are bonds are set higher or they're arrested more than the average Caucasian.
That's true, by the way. That's true, by the way.
Well, hold on now. If an individual is stopped on a traffic stop and there is marijuana in the car, why do we have to look at it as in black and white?
Well,
we as a society have to get away from making everything black or white.
Well, it is black and white. It is black and white. If you walk into, I don't know what it's like in Arkansas. I haven't been in court in Arkansas, but I can tell you that in New York City, if you walk into Brooklyn, Queens, Manhattan, Bronx, criminal court, criminal Supreme Court, it is 98% people of color.
Well,
and it cannot
in order to properly argue this with you, Crystal, I would need demographics. What is the percentage of black and white or, you know, Hispanic, whatever? I would have to know those numbers to if let me tell you something. I live in Sharp County, Arkansas, okay,
right,
where the population here is 97% white,
right,
3% African American.
Wow.
Now, I could use the same type of argument that you're using, that every time that I go to court in Sharp County District Court or Circuit Court, 99% of the people standing in there are white.
Well, yeah. I can
demographics, would you at least agree with me, Chris?
Yeah, I agree with you.
And choice.
I agree with you, but you know, it's not 97% people of color and 3% white in Manhattan. Okay.
What is it?
It's more, because, you know, it's more about, like, I don't have the exact number, but I want to say.
Let's guess. Would you say 70-30?
I'm gonna guess. Let's just say conservatively, it's 70%, 75% white, 25% people of color. Let's just say. So, and it's very specific because there's certain areas where people are arrested. Like I always tell my clients, if my clients are people of color, if you're above 110th Street and you have brown skin, the cops are going to stop you for whatever reason, don't have anything on you. So I definitely think, like, I understand what you're saying, like you come from a county that's very white, so obviously it's going to be mostly white people in your jurisdiction.
Well,
I understand that.
We do business in areas and counties of Arkansas that it's completely the polar opposite. And going back to your statement that you just said, if you get in a vehicle and drive it and no taillights are busted, you don't have any illegal contraband on you, and you have a valid driver's license, when you're stopped, then first off, my question would be, what is the probable cause of the stop? But we're getting into your territory there.
That is the question, and that is often the question, and that question leads to get out of the car. I'm going to search you.
Now, once we get to that point right there, would you agree with me as an attorney that compliance and I don't want to use the word compliance. Hold on.
But I know what you're saying.
Professionalism, or basically just maintaining respectful contact with law enforcement, the majority of the time would lead to that individual not getting a ticket or moving on down the road.
Look, I do agree. I do agree with that perspective. That is actually my perspective, is to always keep it very civil and professional. I agree with that. I even actually give lectures about that. I agree with that. But you know, I guess we're like going way off of our topic at this point. But no, but it's interesting for me to hear your perspective. And so you would like challenge Kamala Harris to a a debate on bail reform. Is that right?
Yes.
So tell me a little bit about that.
I have $5,000 sitting in a side account. That is my own personal money.
Right.
Okay. That I have saved for years. That is sitting aside, and if Camilla Harris would like to set a time and a place and a stage, she can even hire the moderator, preferably you, okay? Then we can have a respectful, constructive debate on bail reform, because I emphatically deny everything that she is about when it comes to bail reform.
Give me an example of what you really don't like about what she's saying.
Her statements on bail, and especially with Rand Paul being her partner, the Commonwealth of Kentucky doesn't even have professional bail.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And they want to talk about how bail is so much on the poor and against these people and sitting in jail and stuff like that. Rand Paul is the last person that needs to be talking about bail reform in Kentucky for two reasons. One, there is no professional bail. You have to have it all in cash. You sit in jail unless you pay that whole $25,000 in cash.
Right.
Okay? And the other thing is that their state Kentucky is completely, they are just anti-professional bail. They are religiously against it. If I have an individual that runs off from Arkansas and runs to Kentucky, I have to work with my local law enforcement and local people in order to get Kentucky to help pick them up, because it's illegal for me to go into their state. Now back to Camilla. Everything that she stands for on this SB 10 that Rob Bonta and Hertzfield are for is anarchy. And
why? Why is?
Because what comes out of their mouth in reference to who that they're trying to say that they know nothing about bail, and everything that they put out is in reference to propaganda to gain votes, because each one of those individuals don't understand bail. I would be willing to bet live in a gated community,
But I think, like, just from what I'm hearing, it sounds to me like you run your bail operation differently from, like, for instance, the bail bondsman in New York City. Like, it sounds to me like you have a more, like, community-based approach. You try to work with people. You know everybody. It's very different. But it is a fact that if people cannot, and that's why, and in fact, you do agree to bail reform in a way, correct me if I'm wrong, because you agree that there should be reasonable bail. That's a bail reform.
Bail reform as it is proposed, though, is absolutely no bail needed and just released. And that, Crystal, is where we fundamentally disagree.
Well, I think...
cannot...
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I cannot, knowing what that is going to bring over a short period of time. Now, listen. We are talking about individuals who are charged with a crime. Now, if you're charged with a crime and there's no deterrent, you know when you commit that crime, okay? Now, please don't throw at me right now, they're innocent until proven guilty. I support that. But if you allow a mentality to the society that we're in right now, that I can break the law, I'm not going to have to worry about going to jail. I'm not going to have to post bail. And then if I do run off, the only way that they're going to catch me, because the system is going to be overran with warrants, is I'm going to have to slip up and get caught doing another crime, and then only hope, Crystal, that the warrant that's in NCIC is nationwide or covers the area that they're in. Because here's why. In today's society, in the criminal justice system, has been overran so much by case log and crime and this and that, that if an individual misses court because of the judicial distress that most counties or entities are in, are only putting those warrants in either surrounding counties, surrounding cities, or cities only, and at best, surrounding states. And that, Crystal, gets out into the mindset of the people that are dealt with in the criminal justice system.
But listen, I don't think bail reform is just let everybody go. That's not bail reform. Like in New York, we have bail reform. So bail reform is a couple of things. First of all, it's like making it accessible to for people to get out of jail, right? So the judge set in New York, the judge sets bail. Okay, but let's say the judge sets, it's a misdemeanor, the judge sets $1,000. The family can't pay the $1,000. We have organizations in New York that will pay the bail for you, depending on, you know, your criminal history and your record and whatever. They'll pay the bail for you. That's bail reform. We also have situations where there's something called supervised release, which is basically when you commit a crime, the judge says, you know what, you know, I don't really want to set bail on you, but this is kind of a bad crime. And certain crimes are omitted, like violent crimes, like sex crimes. You can't be charged with any of that. And we're going to do supervised release, which means you have to check in with, it's almost like a bail bondsman, but there's no money. You have to check in twice a week. You have to get services.
Where does the funding come from, and who pays for that? And who looks for the individuals when they don't go to court or they don't check in?
That, for supervised release, it's run through the court.
Okay, but where does that money come from to hire that individual to take those phone calls or tell them to come down to 82nd Street and check in? Who pays for that?
The court pays for that. So that comes from a tax. Well, it comes from.
I'm going to hammer you on this,
it comes from tax.
Where does that money come from?
It comes from taxes. Okay, it comes from taxes. But
okay, it comes from taxes.
Right.
The taxpayer.
Right. So you're saying that even that form of bail reform would not be acceptable because the money is coming from the taxpayer.
I will always be on the side of the taxpayer. If you have an entity as a professional bail that is 100% reliable, or on the hook is the word that I use, for an individual who is charged with a crime to make sure that they go to court, if that bond was $1,000 and that entity of people that were willing to pay, if they paid that $100, or in Arkansas that $180 to a bondsman, they're not on the hook for anything. They fulfilled their cause. The bondsman's going to make sure that he or she goes to court.
Right.
Because here's...
Go ahead.
But let me ask you a question, Crystal. You're an attorney.
Right.
If being against the bail bondsman is so much because they have to pay to get out of jail, then what does it sound like to you as an attorney if I said, if you don't need bail, then why should you as an indigent individual or a person that has money have to pay for an attorney if you're innocent?
Well, unfortunately, innocent people get arrested every day.
Absolutely. I've never denied that.
So innocent people get arrested every day.
Crystal,
go ahead.
Would you agree with me, Crystal, that in the majority, now we're talking about plus 50% of individuals that are arrested on a day-to-day basis, when it comes down to the nuts and the bolts, the evidence would prove different?
No.
Oh, Crystal.
No, I don't believe that every single person that is arrested is innocent. I don't know the percentage, but I can tell you, and I don't know Arkansas, so again, I'm going to put that as a caveat, but I can tell you in New York City, a lot of people are arrested, you know, they're racially profiled, they're pulled over illegally, by the way. They're not supposed to be pulled over. You know, it escalates, they get arrested for obstruction of governmental administration or...
Why did it escalate?
Well, why were they pulled over? The question is, why were they pulled over? The onus, wait, let me just finish my thought. The onus is not on the defendant. The onus is on the police officers. Why were they pulled over? That's the issue. It's not, well, they talked back. Yeah, you know, they shouldn't have talked back. I agree with you. We're on the same page. But, you know, but they did. But the question is, why were they pulled over? A lot of arrests people are pulled over illegally. Whatever, it escalates, they end up getting arrested, but I don't believe that most people that get arrested are guilty.
Well, your statement, Crystal, means that plus 50% of people that are pulled over, for whatever the reason is, that more than 5 out of 10 are innocent of the crime. If that's true, if that's legitimately true, then why do we even have law enforcement? Why do we have jails? Why do we have prisons?
Well, it's a system. It's a job. It's a job. I mean, police officers have quotas. You know, like a perfect example is this supervised release program. this new program that's run through the court. Before this program was created, the judges would look at different defendants. And if you were a defendant, you were charged with a felony, it was your first arrest, you had community ties, you would get released. You would get ROR, to be released on your own recognizance. Now that this new program is in place, instead of RORing these people that should really be ROR'd, they have everything they need to be ROR'd, they now put them into this program. Why? My opinion, it creates jobs. These people don't need bail. I had an argument with the judge about it. I was like, Judge, she doesn't need this program. She needs to be ROR'd. It's an extra burden on her. So, you know, I don't disrespect law enforcement. You know, I see that you really pro law enforcement. I don't disrespect law enforcement, but being a criminal defense attorney and cross-examining police officers as part of my job, I can see they work hard. They arrest a lot of people. They don't remember half of the time. And that's not because
they do a thankless job, Crystal.
That's not because they're bad people. It's because they're working really hard. And so,
and
go ahead. Go ahead.
I think, you know, when I hear people speak about, you know, law enforcement and stuff like that, I always, you know, I have these debates all the time with people that are, you know, anti-law enforcement and, you know, this and that, and they can do these things so much better. My simple thing to them is, then sign up. Mm-hmm. See what you got.
Right.
Because let me tell you something. As a bondsman since 2003 that has had ties to law enforcement and having family and relatives in law enforcement, imagine this. Imagine, and I'll use New York City. Imagine being on 82nd Street and being the only person in the car, not having a partner. Mm-hmm. And you pull over a car that's occupied 4 times. As soon as you turn on them overheads to your patrol unit, you are putting your life on the line. Mm-hmm. Because you don't know what those 4 occupants in that vehicle have on them in their coats in the wintertime. You don't know when you walk past the trunk of that car or tailgate of that truck what you're going to be met with. Mm-hmm. And then when that officer is there and back up is 10 miles or 10 minutes away, then that individual, if they find marijuana or cocaine or heroin or guns or whatever in that vehicle, and those individuals are arrested and taken to jail, and then just let out, then that officer's whole period of time of getting out of his car was for nothing. Absolutely nothing.
No. It's not for nothing. And by the way, the same could be said for the people in the car. They don't know if that officer is like crazy. They don't know if that officer is gun crazy. Is going to shoot them.
Crystal, we can do better interaction with law enforcement.
I mean, they don't know. They could be dead when the police officer comes up. So it goes both ways. I mean, I think there needs to be a dialogue, you know, between the police and, you know, and just citizens.
All right, well, then let me ask you this as a criminal defense attorney. If let's say that you're the police officer. We're going to flip roles, okay? You're the police officer, and I'm driving home the car today. You pull me over for running a red light,
right?
Okay? When you walk up to my car, if both of my hands are on the steering wheel, there's no music blaring. I don't have a cigarette hanging out of my mouth. And when you walk up to the window and you introduce yourself to me, and I respectfully reply back to you, how are you today, Officer Crystal? And then if you ask me for my driver's license and proof of insurance and registration, and I hand that to you, and then you tell me that you're going to run me and check me and everything's fine, we're civil. You go back to the car, you run me, I don't come back with any warrants or warrants, you come back to my car, both my hands are back on the steering wheel, the windows is rolled down, there's no music blaring, okay? There's no nothing, there's no distractions. We're being civil with each other, and you tell me that you're either A, going to give me a ticket, or you're not going to give me a ticket. If you do, and I feel like that I did not run that stop sign, then I'm going to say, okay, officer, thank you. I respectfully disagree with the ticket. I take it, and I go have my day in court.
Right.
Now, things only get out of line if I start being evasive, obstructive, disrespectful, making things complicated. You
Well, I think, I don't want you to take this the wrong way, but I think that's because you're a white man. Because honestly, if people of color are pulled over, that's not how it goes down quite often. And it's not because they have like loud music or they have a cigarette dangling from their mouth. It's because they're black. But I wanted to get back to Kamala Harris and the bail reform.
Before we do that, let me just say one thing about your statement. When, as a society, can we get past black and white?
I don't think we can get
there.
Well, I definitely don't think, and I don't want to get into politics, but I definitely don't think we're going to get past it during this administration. Maybe in the next one, but I think it's become it's
that's for another time. You call me on the side. We'll talk politics.
But tell me if there's anything about bail reform that you would agree with that would not cause anarchy. Because obviously we don't want anarchy. Like, I don't agree that bail, I don't think the argument for bail reform is that there's going to be, there's no bail. Like, I don't think anyone is saying, listen, just release people and there's no bail. That's not true. Like, if you get released on your own recognizance, there's bench warrants. There's a warrant squad in New York. I don't know about in Arkansas. There's a warrant squad, and they are very busy picking people up all the time that don't show up to court. People that are criminals always end up back in court. They get rearrested. Like, I had a client that just bench warranted. He just came back, so he's going to be charged with bail jumping, on top of his other case, and his new case. So I don't think anyone's saying people shouldn't, have any kind of teeth in, associated with their case. I don't think that's what the argument is. The argument is that poor people that cannot afford the bail, even if it's $100, they cannot afford it. Is it fair for those people to sit in jail?
Is it fair for them to make a choice to end up in jail and be rewarded for it? That's my heartburn. What does it matter if you poor, middle class, or rich? Mm. We cannot, as a society, go back to to allow the mentality that just because I am poor, it allows me the ability to end up in jail and kick the bucket back to the taxpayers. That's where you and I fundamentally disagree on this thing.
Right.
Let's get away from black and white and poor and rich. Let's get back down to the core of choice. Right.
Well, Jeremy, this has been like a fascinating conversation, and I have to say I've enjoyed speaking to you. So I really think I should have you back on the show, and we should continue our discussion. But I got to wrap it up for right now. But thank you so much, and thank you for calling in, and keep up the good work. And I hope to speak to you again soon. Okay?
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
All right. You take care. Okay.
You too.
Bye.
Bye-bye.